level. So you're living in Bali. You just moved.
Portugal, actually. Going to Bali in 2 weeks.
Got it.
Yes.
Got it. Oh my gosh. So how have you left LA behind? Are you done with LA? Are you just sort of like, I'm taking a break?
Yeah. Mark and I, my husband and I, started to feel in around 2016 that we really wanted a shift. But then when everything went down with like the whole escaping the whole cult thing, and there was like the being stalked and harassed, and we went into like a government safe address program and all of that and the documentary. By about 2019, we were like, let's get out of here. And he's a Portuguese citizen. So we'd already been thinking, where can we go that's a different pace of life that feels like it's far away from all of that. And so we packed everything up at the end of 2019 and just jumped. And then COVID happened and we were nomadic and we were like, no, let's like put down roots in Portugal.
Yeah.
And I love LA. Wow. I love going back, but it tends to be for me, I like it for like 3 weeks. I'm like, woo!
Yes.
Erewhon and all the people. And like, I love it. And then I'm like, I can't breathe.
Erewhon.
Yes.
It's literally, yep. That's my favorite. Because everything you get is organic. And I'm like, well, how are we not doing this? How are we poisoning the food? Why is this happening? Like, why can't we just get everything organic? Europe and Portugal is, they don't have these GMOs and you can eat you can just eat quite as much food. Yeah. But it's cleaner. It's not as bad. It's way cleaner. Like you can eat pasta in Italy. People don't bloat. It's, they're like, oh my God, I'm not actually gluten. I don't have to do the gluten-free thing.
Yeah, exactly. No, I really miss Erewhon though. I will say like there's all the fancy products and stuff that we don't have here. It's very simple. So I miss it.
Yeah. God. Okay. So I met you, or I didn't meet you. I saw The Vow, and it took me on a harrowing ride, and it was really hard to watch, and it brought up a lot of my own stuff because a situation that I had gone in, 10, 15 years ago was sort of like, I described it as a one-man cult, and I didn't feel like I felt understood or heard. And essentially it's like when you're really young, which I was like 18, 20, and I had just given away my power, and he was a manager. And so sort of it was this situation where when, you're like, oh my God, I want to be successful. And, you love this man. And there's so many amazing qualities, because in order to be into a cult, you have to believe that, they have a lot of value and they're bringing something to the table. And
exactly.
And then it gets very, so sort of then they have these demands, and then you're like, wait, why can't I text my friends? And why can't I, have a boyfriend? And why is this like, what does that have to do with anything? Oh, it's your focus is not on the music anymore. And then slowly but surely, whatever my pain was with and riffs I had with my parents, I felt validated. I felt heard for the first time. I felt seen because all my thoughts and fears that weren't validated from externally from, my friends, or they wouldn't validate those things. And I would feel sort of crazy, but then he would validate that. But then it was sort of, I gave away and gave up all my power, all my control in order to trust that he had the best interest at heart. And some of that, was like some daddy issues. And so I thought I was in a very unique, and slowly but surely I had, basically like it was a very like mind controlly, and I partly like did that to myself. I was very young, but like looking back, I'm like, how, and it's such a slow burn that it happens. It's such a slow adjustment each time, that this happened over years until I was like, the line had, I think Jordan Peterson talks about this, that, when the line gets pushed, it just only gets pushed incrementally. So it gets pushed here,
they boil you slowly like a frog.
And then to the point where you're so far down the line, you can't even recognize how did I wind up in this situation? How did this happen? So where were you when you decided to, I had reached out to you and I was like, I finally felt like, you know, with the whole Me Too stuff and everything that came out, I felt like I was like, oh my God, this is terrible. Like a lot of things you don't feel so alone, but I definitely felt your story. I really related to you and you being an actress and everything you had gone through. And I just was like, yours was a way more extreme version. But I was like, oh my God, this is horrible. I'm so sorry. And also like, I understood where you were coming from.
Same pattern. So yeah, I'm so sorry you went through that too. And so young, it's like,
Yeah, but you know, and there's we can get into more like I'm grateful for it now, and I've like found forgiveness. But it, like how did this happen? Like, how did you first walk me through the process of how did you hear about it? How did you get into this?
Yeah, so I was in Hollywood in my early 20s or kind of early to mid 20s, and I had a record deal. Like I was making an album. And that was kind of my whole focus. And then like things were looking really good. And we actually had a meeting in the Capitol Records building with all the heads of EMI North America. It was like one of those moments where they said, we love it. What do you want? It was like, we'll give you it. Like we're in. And my manager at the time said, let's just wait. I've got a feeling. He's like, something's not right. And so we, went back, whatever. And the next day it was the whole, was it the 2008 market crash the next day? It was around that time. But anyway, they all got fired. Every single person who had been in that office the next day. And so we were like, okay. And so there was a lot of flailing around. Like they didn't know what to do with the album. And it was just this strange kind of time of hanging out and wondering, what am I doing? And that was when I started kind of looking into spirituality. I felt the stress of the Hollywood world and how rough that was on my nervous system, and just like the darkness as well that's there. And
my manager was in the music. So I started off in the music industry. So that was, I mean, it's the mafia. Let's be honest. Like now that everything that's happening with Diddy, I'm like, I'm not surprised. Like this is what it was. This is what was, waiting for us. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So there was some darkness there. And then I ended up doing a meditation program, and I had a huge spiritual awakening when I was like 25. That was 3 days of just blowing my mind and pure joy and love and bliss, like Kundalini awakening. That was kind of the first hint. That. Yeah. You understand, right? Totally get it. Yeah. Yep. We're so similar. Sorry. I'm like so excited because we have so much. And like, I want to hear about you, acting. Yes. No, but continue. But I'm so happy you're here. I'm just very excited. All right, continue. Thank you. Yeah. So there was this awakening, and that changed everything because I tapped into joy, and I was like, wait, what's going on here? I was like, I need to like quit and go and join an ashram or like something. So that really changed everything. And I started really seeking, which meant that I was vulnerable too, because I was like ready to join something. And I then reconnected with Mark, my husband, my now husband, and we had met 3 years earlier. He was actually already in NXIVM, the cult. And yeah, so we reconnected at that time, and I was kind of in that phase of like, I'd found something real spiritually, and I was jaded on the industry. I was like, I don't know what is next. And so he was so authentic and real with me in a way that I hadn't experienced in Hollywood. And I was like, oh, you're doing something profound. Yeah, like it really struck me. And so at this point, Mark, he had no, like there was no inclination of anything like untoward going on. No, he just thought it was amazing. Like genuinely was so happy with what he was doing. I mean, I guess now looking back, he could say, yeah, there were red flags, but he kind of didn't really put it together. And at that point really felt passionate about what they were doing. And yeah, I just saw something special in him and the people that were doing it. And so I was like, great. So I was like, packed up my apartment in LA. We fell in love, and I was like in. And I will say, like, I loved it,
But of course there were red flags. And now looking back, I can see that by the time I like packed up my LA apartment and I landed in Albany, New York, I did have a moment of like, wait, what am I doing here? This is like a depressing place, like really feeling that. But I felt something real with what they were doing as well. So that was kind of how I got looped in. And like you said, there's good things that they loop you in with.
There always has to be some really fundamental great things, because you're not, I mean, how it happens. There has to be like some genius, like in a lot of ways. It's very complicated and it's multi-layered. I mean, it's not this like twisty mustache. It's not always this clear cut thing. But I think there was a lot of genius, and there was a lot of like, I never felt more supported and more loved in my entire life. It just came at a price, and there was a lot of things that were attached to it. And I was like, I was so young. So it's kind of like you can discard these moments of that feels inappropriate and this is not okay. But there was not, at the time, there was 90% where it was all good. Yeah. And I was like, wow, there's a red flag there. But then you're seeing it, but because all this other stuff outweighs and all the benefits and we were having success, then you just sort of, dismiss it. So I think it's easy. What were the red flags so you're here in Albany, in the middle of nowhere. You're like, what am I doing? I'm an actress. I should be, in New York or LA. Like, this isn't close to what I want to be doing. How did you, did you think, I imagine if, I were you, there's like, okay, well, there's something that I want to figure out about myself. I need to be more authentic as an artist or something like that. So I can totally appreciate that, I took like an NLP class, and I've took all the self-help things. So it's sort of like, well, I need to fix this trauma or this family lineage and this epigenetics and clear this out so I can be fully available for being the best for my craft, right?
Yes, absolutely. So I had seen the red flags, and I guess one of the red flags was that there were some kind of pieces out in the press saying that it was a cult, but I had heard other things be called a cult that I didn't think were bad. So I was kind of like, okay, that's what people say.
Sure.
And I was like, I'll just check it out. I'll feel it out for myself. And yeah, there was that promise of, especially as an artist, there was talk of like they were going to create this amazing program for actors and singers, and we'd figure out how to unlock all those things and express more fully and like more authentically. And so there was that promise. And I also, because I had that spiritual seeking thing going on, I also just saw Keith as an enlightened master, because that's what they all were saying. And yeah, everyone was just talking about how incredible he was. It kind of builds up. And he was able to speak on those terms. So I'd have, conversations with him when I first met, and it's like, oh, he gets it. At the same time, my body like rejected being around him right away.
Wow. What were the signs?
Just the creeps, like, ugh, and like he really stunk. It was like, but.
Oh.
Yeah. The BO and other things.
Yeah, that doesn't, it something's not congruent.
Right. Yeah. And the vibes were off for sure. And just to clarify, like I never had any kind of intimate thing with him at all. I think that he attempted to groom me and I failed. Thank goodness.
Yeah. Good.
I failed. I was too defiant or something. But so there was those kinds of things. But I was having a profound experience in the trainings, in the programs, like really breaking through stuff and experiencing freedom in myself. So I was like, well, then it has to be good. Even if Claire Bronfman seems to be kind of mean. I was like, but the whole thing seems good.
Yeah. So what were the takeaways? Because it's funny in those situations, it's never all bad. And that's where it can be, a very tricky situation. And what were the good parts? Like what did you find useful? Like what did serve you?
Yeah. So after my first 5-day program, which was actually in LA, that was right before I went to Albany, that had a profound effect on me. I mean, it was very cathartic, which of course cults kind of use that. It's like you go into these really deep emotions and you're all bonding and you're like hugging and crying together. Like it's beautiful. So they kind of...
It's like an acting class. That sounds like an acting class.
Exactly. There's bonding that happens and you're getting free kind of. Also, after the first 5-day, I felt really productive. Like I had struggled with procrastination and suddenly I was like getting everything done. I was kind of on fire and and just feeling free. Like I think it tapped me initially, like in those beginning phases, it tapped me back into that spiritual space that I'd found through the meditation. So it was activating something that was very real and that felt much more real than looking around Hollywood and seeing that whole thing. So it was an internal experience. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it is interesting for those, who aren't in the industry watching. It is, the industry, it's so cliche, but it is very smoke and mirrors where these illusory lights that people gravitate towards it's not real light, and it's a lot of smoke and mirrors and there's a lot of, it's a kind of like music because music is such a medium of one of the most powerful, influential thing that we have in terms of storytelling and movies. I mean, you can't just like grab a guitar and just get up on stage. You have to have like a whole production in terms of storytelling. And so I think because there's such the power in storytelling and, how you can influence people. I mean, that's what they used back in like the 40s and for propaganda to get people to, believe in the war. And so they found how powerful that tool could be. And some of it can be, just purely storytelling. And then some of it is like, hey, we want to sell you things and, just incite the fear. And so you'll buy more things. So it's sort of, there is this like, there is sort of this cultish, like it's kind of everywhere. So it's kind of, there are these benefits to understanding, to being in it, and where it strips down your entire world. And then you have to look at the world in such a different manner and be like, that's a cult, that's a cult, that's a cult, that's a cult. Like your whole entire world is like a mind cult. You're like, if it's a tribalistic way of thinking, you're like, we're nuanced creatures. We're complicated. And to just have this sort of binary, like, if you're not with us, you're against us. I'm like, that's a cult. So.
Yes, exactly. And it is everywhere. But until you like learn your lesson.
You learn your lesson. We learned it. Oh my God. Yay for us. We just learned it in our 20s, It's sort of, I kind of find that, when I was growing up, when you'd see like people who have midlife crises and, they like get a new, a new wife and or like get a new car or whatever that version of that looks like. It's like either you have your midlife crisis. I had it in my 20s.
Mine in my 30s.
So, or 20s/30s. But it just sort of went. It continued. But I find that, the industry can be very much the same. So I can see where, there is a lot of like smoke and mirrors and just like, ooh, like everyone is pretending here. I'm living in New York and I love New York. What I love about it is you get an immediate reaction to like people in the street. If you're having a great day, they will mirror that back to you. Like, hey, nice coat, nice this, like, bah, bah, bah. And they're so friendly. And then, so what's an interesting thing about New York, and if you're having a great day, they will mirror that back to you and they'll be like, whoa, you have amazing energy. And they'll talk to you and they'll engage with you and people are so friendly. And if you're having a bad day, they'll also mirror that back to you, be like, what's your problem, bitch? Like, So with LA, it's everyone, what I've noticed is it's built on insecurities of I'm not enough and I need to prove that I'm enough and I need to be validated and loved and have status and fame. So people come, people in New York, people want to just make it and survive and feel like they're thriving, you know, and it just feels like a different mentality. It's more based on money, whereas LA is based on fame, and which says to me, I didn't get enough attention growing up. Please notice me and validate me. Yeah. And so I think that there's a lot of peacocking and overcompensating of being like, I'm enough. So, I feel like when we enter into these things, it's like we're trying to find that realization that we're enough kind of thing.
Yes, 100%.
So you're on this journey, you're having these epiphanies and breakthroughs, and they're very profound. You have immediate, like a body reaction to hard pass. You're like, I know everyone's saying that he's great, but my body's my body's telling me no.
Yeah. Can we just talk about he hasn't showered for like maybe a month is kind of the vibe. Yeah.
Oh my God. Well, okay. So,
but again, if the guy's enlightened, you're like, well, why is that a problem?
He's above you're like, right. Yeah. He's above showering.
Right. You kind of have your mental process with it of like, and they'd already kind of trained me at that point to look to myself, to be responsible for my own reactions. So it's like, if I felt myself rejecting that, it's like, well, that's my problem. And that's how the self-gaslighting starts.
I do. I mean, like to a certain extent, like I really do agree with keep your side of the street clean, and we can only control ourselves. And so I do appreciate that. Yeah. But then it is like, hey man, just letting you know if you want the feedback, maybe showering might be nice. Right. Totally. And then that's also on him because he shouldn't take that personally as well to his own advice.
Yes, exactly. But because of the system that it was, like, I'm sure if I had said something then, there would have been feedback from 5 different directions of like, you might want to look at that. That's your issue. It kind of goes into that. But I agree with you. Like in the normal world, of course, like take responsibility, be a responsible human. But you just got to be aware.
The hierarchy was no one could say anything to him.
Yes, exactly. And you learn that pretty quick.
Wow. Okay. So, and when did it start to like how long when you were in there, when did it start to change for you? When did you start to pick up like, okay, there's something, really off? Like, I think, weren't you like booking like big things or things were happening? So you felt like, oh, this is really great. Things are working in my favor at this point.
Yeah. I mean, stuff was going pretty well, like up until 2012. And then actually, no, things were still going well then. And I was thinking, actually, I want to go back to LA and pursue acting more. I was like, I have these dreams. I don't want to be stuck in Albany forever. Sure. And so I kind of planned, like, even though Mark and I were married at that point, we had been back and forth. And I like kind of lined up to have a friend that I could stay with and I would be there a little more.
Great.
And I made the plan. And then I took a walk with Keith. This was what he did, I guess, with the women. Like, he'd take you for walks in the middle of the night, like 2 a.m., 3 a.m. And I know. And again, like nothing, well, I was about to say nothing untoward happened, but there were kind of little things. Mm-hmm. But lucky for me, it didn't lead to any of the like really, really horrible stuff. But yeah, so I took a walk with him and I basically said, like, I want to go and pursue these things. And he just turned it all around to like, that's your issue and you'll never be spiritually free unless you work through this. Oh my gosh, sorry. I think we've got like major construction starting today in our
You're
building.
Totally
Can
fine.
You hear it? Okay.
No, I like for a quick second, but it's fine. Yeah, we're totally good. Tanner, how we doing? Ship shape.
Okay, so the last sentence, just so that I can give you that edit if you want. What was I saying? Oh yeah. So he led me to believe like you will never be spiritually free until you like stay in Albany and work through all of your issues until you have none. Mm-hmm. And then you can go and pursue those things. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I just remember feeling like my soul kind of shut down because that's not what I wanted. But I was like, oh, well, I don't want like spiritual death. So I guess I'll stay. And then it got worse after that.
And then was it sort of the whispers from other people of what was happening? And like, were you feeling an energy shift with the other members, like how did this turn, and how did you start being like, okay, I need to get out of this? And then.
Yes. So I actually didn't get the really dark details. Like I didn't know actually what was happening until after I'd left. And then people started telling me. But the feelings that I started to get, it was really like, okay, so I had another huge spiritual awakening in 2016 and like really big one. It was kind of like that joy and bliss and stuff for two months or 3 months or something. And like, it changed everything. And that was kind of my own accord, because I had just decided, you know what, I'm feeling a little lost. I need to just sit and meditate and find myself. So that happened. And that changed everything again, because then I could see like, wow, I'm experiencing all this joy and I'm looking out at all these people and I can see that they're just controlled. It's not real joy. So there was that. And then yes, there were a number of things that, like, looking back, I can piece it all together into DOS and what was going on there with the whole master-slave thing that they were doing. But I thought that Keith was good and that people like Alice and Mac were doing the things of their own accord. So I could see that there was really bad stuff going on. For example, like they were all counting calories, and Alison got really, really skinny, and then she was like mentoring these young women and they were getting really skinny and they all were looking frail and very miserable. And Alison kept getting given more and more power in the organization. Like she would get all these promotions and I'm like, but wait a second, like, isn't this a humanitarian company? Like, isn't this about ethics and morals? And I just kept seeing her like having more control over people that felt so bad. So I actually was trying to fight that for a year and a half and trying to like have mediations with Alison and some of the people involved. And it was about a year and a half where the leadership was just gaslighting me so majorly that I was blaming myself as well. And I was like, I'm seeing all these things, but they're leading me to believe that I'm a suppressive person because I'm pointing these things out. So that was a really dark time. No, sorry, no, I'm getting the timeline mixed up. The awakening happened after that year and a half. Yes.
Oh, yes. Okay. So that's when you know what's really interesting when you said that? When I think about, like, I think about this world and beyond the veil, like when you're in that spiritual realm, it's all okay and there's no judgment. Like, and so it was sort of like, oh, they're being controlled. It was more of an observational, they're not very happy. Like it kind of sounded, no, because I think in terms of like our higher selves and the enlightenment, there's not really fear. It's just love. It's the vibration of love. So there's like two vibrations. It's fear or it's love. And so when I think about, like that's kind of a great way. So you're not, thinking in terms of, I should maybe not do this, where it's not, it's more of just like this powerful realization. I just thought that was just interesting, of like this not being joining them in the fear. You're just like, I'm not on this vibration. I'm just going to go this way.
Yes, that is how it initially happened. Because I'd been in that, I now that I've pieced together the timeline again, yes, I'd been in that kind of year and a half of hell and like just miserable. And my body was like protesting and breaking down in various ways as it does.
Your body will do that. Yes, the body keeps the score.
Yeah, it's saying, hey.
Have you read that book?
I haven't, but I need to. I've heard about it.
It's so good. It's so good. Okay, so, and you know what's interesting is that when I watched The Vow, I really believe that they really believed it. So I don't think that they thought that they were gaslighting you. They just really believed it. They really believed what this man had to say. And I think they were willing to die for it, essentially. Like as,
I think it was different for different people. Like there were a lot of people that definitely really just believed in it and would do anything for it.
Sure. And then, like Nancy, right?
Yes. So the thing is with Nancy, and I guess I don't need to name the other names, but with some people, there was also a power complex. So it was tied up with a belief in the mission, but then you could see that they were getting a thrill out of like beating people up as well.
Right. Oh,
so
it's like
both.
The fifth Harry Potter. When do you remember the fifth Harry Potter?
Them. Can you believe it? I haven't read them. I haven't seen them. I know.
Anyway, there was this character, I forget her name, but she's basically kind of like getting off on the power, and she's like horrible. And yeah, anyway, I was So there was some of that. And actually like a lot of the people who did get indicted had that going on. So it was like the justice system was able to see that. And then there were people that were much more just brainwashed and really doing stuff because they thought it was good. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So then, all right. So you have a major awakening. You're seeing sort of the decline where it started really great. It was super beneficial. So how far into this were you where you were like, I'm getting all these benefits? How far in did it start being like, oh, my body's rejecting this?
Yeah. I think it was about 4 years. Maybe a little more. So
wow. Okay.
Yeah. I joined in 2010. I mean, there were, I guess, like symptoms that I was having earlier, but my body really started to reject it in about 2014, really in 2015. I was like, ooh, like I'm not doing okay here.
And so you're living are you living on this compound or?
It wasn't a compound. It was more just lots of people like renting places or buying nearby places in the same area. Yeah.
Got it.
And then we had like the center, which was kind of 20-minute drive from where everyone would take these like midnight 2 a.m. walks. I know, it's crazy.
So 2014, you're like, this isn't great. And then you're seeing the decline of all the other people. And then, what was that shift for you? How did you get out?
It's interesting to try to break it down because you get boiled like a frog. It's like, because it wasn't just all of a sudden one day it was bad. What happened was, okay, so Keith wanted to do, or he said he wanted to do this program called Ultima, which was for actors and musicians. So I was like, finally, after all these years, we're doing this. Yeah. So I was all in on that. I was like, yes. And we all, I guess, how many of us were there? Maybe like 40 or so who came from all around the world and were just very committed to do this program. And it just got crazy with the hours. Like he had us studying to kind of create different curriculums and workshopping things like as actors. And very quickly, I was working like 22 hours a day. Some days more.
And what were you doing?
This is the thing with cults. They keep you really busy and it's just back to back to back to back things. And it's a part of, I think, the whole plan to like deprive people of sleep and break them down. And there's so much pressure to have all these meetings and then like you're considered lacking character or lacking principle if you're tired. And like there was no taking naps. It was just how much can you push through? So that was about when my body broke down too, as you can imagine.
My God. So you're getting 3 hours of sleep a night?
Sometimes not even that much. Yeah. Like you'd be in a training for 14 hours and then there'd be meetings and then you'd have all these practices to do to get done for the morning. And so, I was taking calls at like 3 a.m. 3 a.m. Yeah.
And what would you practice? Like what was, because it is interesting. It wasn't just like arbitrary nothingness, just sitting in a room all day. So like what were, it has to, like there had to be something that was like useful in that.
Of course. And I mean like acting tools, practices to kind of unlock emotions. And then we were also developing like some kind of yoga thing that was tied up with emotional experiences while you were doing these physical exercises. So we were all a part of developing these wild things that Keith wanted.
Right. And was any of it useful? Did you actually be like, okay, cause it's like, all right, I'm going to go along with this because some of this is, you're like, oh yeah, this makes sense. But then you're like, okay, but this all this other part of me working to the bone does not make sense.
Yeah. So I had to reject everything. Like once I actually left and realized what had happened, I threw everything away. Like I just, my opinion was everything was bad. It was all entirely bad. And I felt that way for a number of years, and just, over time have started to take that back and recognize that he was just taking stuff from everywhere else anyway. Like he was taking stuff from psychology and NLP and
I was just going to say, it sounded NLP. It sounded like Tony Robbins. It sounded like there was a lot of useful things that I'm like, he was really smart and really brilliant in one way of he knew these different modalities of healing. So it's like, of course, all these people who are successful came in and, had a lot going on in their life, because otherwise, if you had no value, you can't just keep someone in a room. You're like, no, I'm just going to walk out the door.
Exactly.
So,
it was a really cool group of people. And like looking back, I actually can see the pieces of it that were good and that had nothing to do with him. He was just like using them as a part of his system. And I've taken more trainings and stuff now to reclaim that and actually look at personal growth again and see the value of all these things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's been interesting for, one of my best friends, he's really, and I just had him on the podcast, but we talked about this, that we can find people, we can find the value in those things and say, like, even if there's a person, because I actually did the same in my situation. I'm like, it's all bad, but I'm like, don't, throw out the baby with the bathwater. Like you want, there was some, great teachings, or there was some great wisdom, and it's not, that. So I think when I was talking to my best friend, that we'll both do this. I think along our journey, that even if we don't totally agree with the message or what somebody's saying, we can take what serves us and be like, okay, you know what? You make sense there. That point's really great. I can appreciate that. And then discard the rest.
Yeah. Exactly. And use all of it with a good intention. I think that's the thing, that Keith grabbed all these things and then used all these things to create a trap for his own egoic purposes.
Yeah.
But we don't
Whatever
have to do
happened
that.
to him? Do we know what happened to him? Like what is his backstory?
I think he had a very strange relationship with his mom. There was maybe some.
So he wants control over women. That makes sense. So he felt he had no control with his mother. So then he feels, I get to control all these women and I can feel safe. No one's going to hurt me.
Yeah. And I think he was kind of like a geek in school, and people didn't really like him. Like he was kind of a loser, I think, in school. And I'm sorry to use that word, because I know a lot of people have that experience and it's really hard. But I think that
that's what he felt like. That was probably his model of the world, is he said, I'm a loser. Like, yeah, exactly. So if I can get all these women, then I'm validated. Yeah.
And have everyone think that I'm God, then that'll fix that.
Yeah. Damn. I mean, I guess we all are like, made of God, we all are a piece of God, that we can embody that. And then some people, if they're really walking that path, they embody more God. And then,
and that's
some
beautiful. I don't mean to poo-poo that. It's more just the egoic, like I am God.
No. I totally get it. Yeah. No, totally get it. He literally thought he was one of the gods, but he was not. Okay. So did you think, so now you're out. So then how did you and Mark, figure out how to get out of the situation? And when did you, cause you knew first, you were like the first person where you had this, you could see what was on, the writing on the wall, and you're like, oh my God, I need to get out of this. This is, you suddenly knew. You had that divine conversation with God, as you do, when you get all the downloads, and God will tell you, not in a fearful voice. It'll be in a very soft, hey, so this is what's happening. So here's what, you should do.
Yes, totally. So I started to feel it all intuitively. And because I'd been exploring my own intuitive spiritual stuff, I started to listen to that, because we'd been very programmed not to. It was like, only listen to the logical. But so I had taken that back.
Don't listen to your intuition. Yeah, that is God. That's right there. That's God.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So that was kind of cut off, or we were not encouraged to listen to our intuition. But I had taken that back and had that awakening. And so then I was listening, and I was like, everything, like, I don't know what's going on, but everything feels like it's being crushed. Like the people are feeling like they're just being squished. And totally. A bunch of the women were getting cancer around him. Like his closest older women were all getting cancer and dying. So like everyone that was there, I'm sure on some level felt like, what is this? This is weird. Now we know that he actually was. Yeah, he was poisoning at least one of them that I know of. Yeah. Yeah, it got pretty dark there. So I felt that. And then they had this crazy, so I had decided to quit, and I actually had already decided to quit at this point, but then they had this memorial for one of these women that died, and it was the darkest thing I've ever experienced. I rolled around the floor crying and like throwing up and just feeling so horrible as I was unraveling everything and getting the information of what was happening, because I reconnected with someone else who actually had left quietly.
Wow. Yeah, there's a lot of places you can go with this. So you just guide where to go, but there's so many dark avenues that I was starting to see and feel.
So
and that wasn't included in the vow, was it? Being poisoned? Did I?
No, I don't think so. There were so many dark parts of this. I think that there were murders and stuff that happened too. There were suicides. There was a person that went missing in Alaska. So there was like a lot of really serious things that never got pulled into.
Did he hire a hit?
I don't know. All I know is that there was some intensive that happened in Alaska, and one girl who was involved in it or something just got in a canoe and never came back, a kayak or something. I don't know.
So basically it's a lot of people who were not listening to their higher selves, which when I felt this really interesting is when you reject that part of yourself and your higher self and God, then you literally, your body starts to betray you. Like, if you're, and then your body's freaking out and you're still not listening. And, and I remember thinking when I was in that situation, I was like, I'm going to die here. I'm definitely going to get cancer and die was sort of my feeling if I don't get out.
Yeah.
And I felt like I was, I think I mixed Ambien and wine like a lot. Like I think on one, and I could have died. Like you can die from that, and I think like I was definitely self-medicating and being like, this is bad. So I think, I totally understand and relate to when you're putting somebody else's voice ahead of God's and ahead of like your higher self and ahead of your instincts. Because you're like, no, it's almost like you want to double down. You're like, no, this can't be what it is. But you're like having this internal battle. That's kind of what that you're like, no, this is what it is. You're like, no, it's not, blah, blah, blah. Like, which one is it? And so my, sort of just my path has been continuing to strengthen that voice again and build that bridge. Because it took me years to reconnect to that voice and to trust myself, because I had abandoned my inner child. I had abandoned, myself for the love of someone else that became very dark and, sick. Yeah. I think it was just it's just a sickness, and it's not lost on me that weirdly, like he's very sick, he's very ill. So that's a whole other thing. But I think, if you're not,
it's a sickness.
Yeah, it's a sickness.
For sure.
It's a sickness for sure.
Yes.
So at this point, so there was potentially a murder. There was people who disappeared. There was all these nefarious things that continued to happen. And it just seemed to be this pattern where you were like, okay, there's a sickness here and it's spreading to everyone. And And no one was talking about it. So I can understand how isolating that must feel, to feel so alone. You know, when you're the first one that you're seeing something and everyone is gaslighting themselves into believing, no, I have to believe this story. I need to believe this story because this can't all be for nothing, you know, which is really hard. It's kind of like you're just sticking to a really, really bad relationship, and all those years that have gone by, you can't. And I think that's why a lot of people get into a lot of different mindsets of really unhealthy behavior, because you don't want, 10 or 20 years, let's say, of a marriage where you're like, I can't believe this is what it is. I have to double down to this because my life can't be a complete waste, that sort of feeling.
Yeah.
And
I will say,
go ahead.
Totally. I will say that I'm really grateful for how my awakening happened, actually, because I reclaimed that and I trusted that. And that's how I got out, which meant that my healing process was different than for some of the people who had completely lost that connection and hadn't regained it before they left. So then it's like all the trauma and the lack of trusting themselves. So I'm really grateful for how that happened for me, that even though it was awful, it's like I was listening, and I went through, just a horrible period of trauma and insane stress just from recognizing what had happened, what I'd been a part of.
Yeah, you woke up to it. Right.
Yeah. But at least I had my connection to myself then. And I'd refound that before that happened. So I'm really grateful for that.
Was there anything else in the vow that wasn't included? Like with all this other stuff?
So many things. It was a massive story. So they couldn't possibly tell everything. Like really the vow focused on DOS, the master slave thing.
Sure.
But there were so many different arms of this thing. Yeah. And I guess like they focused a little bit on my story and how Keith was breaking me down as well. And a bit on, Mark's and like each person. But there were plenty of things that were super, super dark that they didn't get into. Yeah. And then like the legal intimidation of there were people who had left years earlier. They would just sue into oblivion, just like lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit. Like, and then they'd bankrupt them. And yeah.
Would they sue them because if they spoke out about it kind of thing, or could they quietly leave?
I think some people did quietly leave. So if you kind of just lied and said, everything's fine, I love you guys, I'm just, not going to deal with my own issues or something. If you put it on yourself, then they would let you go. But there was a group of women, I guess it was like 9 women who left right before I actually came in. They had left, and that's why there was a little bit of press about it, because they had spoken out. And yeah, I think that was a part of why they went after them. I can't even remember all the charges, all the reasons that they went after them, but they made up a bunch of stuff too. They were doing frivolous lawsuits and trying to put people in prison for made up crimes. And I believe, like I can't say I know this for sure, but I do believe they did that successfully to one man who actually just passed away super recently. He spent about 1.5 years in like a federal prison, and then he was on parole. And I'm pretty sure he didn't do whatever they said. They just like set him up. So they tried to do that to Mark and I as well after we left.
Oh my God. What did they try to do?
So we had moved to LA, and we got word from a pretty trusted source that Claire Bronfman had been in LA trying to drum up charges against us. I'm not exactly sure which charges she was trying to drum up. I think it was some made up financial crimes or something. But she had been successful in the past. So at that point, we weren't actually sure if we were going to speak out because we were so afraid as well. Right. Until when we heard she was doing that, we were like, like, this is war. Like, we didn't want this to be war, but this is war now. And then we kicked into gear.
And so did you hire a lawyer? So how did you break the news to Mark? And at this point you guys were together, and were you telling him things? Was he in denial? Did he not see this at this point? Or did he was like, well, yeah, but it's not that bad as you do. You're like, no, I'm getting all these benefits, cause I think it was probably different because, being a man, like it just in terms of like, that's not what, Keith was more interested in the women.
And he kept everything from Mark for sure. So I was definitely trying to tell him, and not so tactfully. Like, I think looking back, if you can be really loving about it, that works better. But I was desperate and just like,
you were panicked.
Yeah.
You were scared. You were terrified.
Listen.
We have to get out of here. Yeah.
And not just for me, but the thought of like him staying in there just made me want to die. I was like, I have to like get him out. And there was I feel like it was maybe a few months where he was listening to me. Like, he was trying to do his own investigation and everything. But then I would talk with him, and then he'd go for a walk with Keith, and he'd come back, you know, more believing in Keith again. So it was this kind of back and forth thing.
I can't even tell you how many times I've just even being in just a relationship, like just a typical LA relationship where, you know, you go to your girlfriends and you're like, oh my God, this happened. I found lingerie in the car. And then you go back and you know, like there was this weird phone call and this. And then you go back to him. And then somehow you're like, yeah, I think it's all great. Like,
yes,
literally, because if they can, you know, talk you, if they're very certain about things, like what I've noticed, if they have a high level of certainty, that's a very Tony Robbins term and NLP term, but you know, I think in the past, I've been with guys where I have less certainty, or I'm more, and I've been more, you know, anxiety or more neurotic, but I've changed that over the years. But I think what I was looking for, you want to feel safe kind of thing. And so then you give over your power of like, I want to feel safe, you know? So I think that's how that looks like. And so, okay,
totally.
So then
and there was
you'd have to.
Yeah. And there was a huge campaign after I left. They went after me. Like, it really bothered them that I left, really bothered them. So there was a whole kind of campaign in the higher ranks to immediately turn everyone against me, including like some of the friends that I was able to say a few things to. Like, I was trying to wake some people up, but really quickly there was this massive smear campaign that happened. And so Mark he had like 5 of them in his ear, and people that he trusted and respected. And so he was torn, like, and I won't say he didn't listen to me, because he did. It's just, it was this horrible experience of trying to figure out what was true for him.
Sure.
But he finally got it after 3 months.
He finally got it. And what was the tipping point for him?
I was so desperately trying to figure out, how do I wake him up? And so I said to him one day, like, what do you need to hear from me, or what do you need to see for you to like really believe me that this is going on? And he said, I would need to see proof that Keith had lied. So I guess for him, that like truth was really a high value. And so I was like, okay, Operation Find Proof that Keith had lied. And I did. So Keith said one thing to him, and I was able to present a series of screenshots to him and a witness, a girl who was able to say, that's not what happened. Here's some screenshots. And so that was the moment where then he was like, okay, Keith lied. Let me start.
Good for you to figure that out.
Oh, I went into such major detective mode, and I had supporters, like I had witnesses that were willing to say stuff to him. But I became like, you know, Claire Danes' character in Homeland, Carrie Matheson, is that her name in the show? I don't know. But I felt like that.
So good. Yeah.
I was like obsessed, and like the paranoia, but I was piecing everything together, and intuitively I was really switched on too. So I literally was like some kind of detective, and I was like, I've just got a hunch. I need to look over here. And then I would find some piece of evidence, and
that's amazing.
Everyone started to leave. So it was kind of compiling. Yeah.
The thing about it, he wanted to control women. Sorry, it's not going to happen. Like, especially with women who, you know, we're naturally just more intuitive. Just, I mean, there's a lot of intuitive men that I'm very lucky to be surrounded by, Tanner being one of them. But women naturally, because I think we have babies, we have to be very intuitive and be able to, you know, I think that's just been passed down for years and years and years. And yeah. So, okay. So then you're on, so you're on this like crazy journey. You're like finally told him, like you want to get out of this. And so he's now right there with you. How do you do it?
Yeah. So before he actually woke up, we had rescued his mum. We got her out of Albany. And that was when he was still so split that his
mom was also in it?
Yeah, she was actually like providing some documents to the feds because she had been working in the financial department.
Wow.
So we got her out. We moved her in with us in LA because he could see that there were enough problems that was a good idea. And then he woke up. And then so it was me, Mark, and his mum living in this tiny LA apartment, super broke, recognizing that they were going after us and trying to have us arrested. And we were being stalked as well. Like they were on our tail. And just the trauma for both of us. I mean, Mark, I won't speak to his process, but it was really dark for him. And for me, it was really physical. Like my body was just having total meltdowns. I felt like I was having a heart attack every single day, just the heart palpitations, and like I couldn't feel my limbs, and just what stress does to your body. And so I would just like pace around and smoke. That was, it kind of helped somehow. And then we went into Operation We Have to Stop Them. And Mark really took the lead. And to really give him credit for that, he led the way in the whole thing, like getting all of it to law enforcement, to the press. We had to go to the New York Times to try it because law enforcement wasn't taking it seriously. We were even presenting them with evidence and they were like, yeah, just be careful. These are dangerous people. And so we were like, okay, we better go to the press. So we got the New York Times, and that was a whole waiting period of where they investigated for like, I don't know how long it was, 6 months. And we were just waiting and waiting and waiting for that story to break. And then eventually it came out, and then immediately the FBI jumped on right after the New York Times.
How did you know to get the New York Times involved? I mean, was that because that's a genius move, is sort of, because they're trying to create this narrative. They're trying to sue you, and they're trying to stalk you, and you're having to hide. This is just, oh my God, this is so crazy. But it's kind of like if you have like a really bad breakup and then you're like, see, I told you, like anyone who's enlightened would not be doing this.
Yes.
Right?
They very much revealed themselves.
Oh God. Okay. Yeah, so this is just, wow. Okay. So, did you have to go into hiding? Did you have to like move from place to place kind of thing? Like, oh no, were you getting served with papers?
So that was our concern. We were trying to avoid getting served.
Yeah.
So we knew that we had to move out of that apartment that we were in. So we just in the nick of time found another apartment to move the three of us into. And we were being very stealthy about things. Like Mark was still kind of like lying to them a little bit to keep them off our tail, to like give them misinformation so that they wouldn't really know what was going on.
Oh no, it's all good. Don't worry about it. Hey, I'm just taking a break, and I just need to go take a vacation and clear my head and come back.
Yeah. I just want to be a filmmaker now. And they're like, okay.
That's what I would have done. Oh my God, I love you guys. Oh, well, I'm just going for a week.
They thought I'd had a spiritual awakening and gone crazy. So I was like, that's perfect. You can totally go with that one.
But they knew.
It really bothered them. But so we moved into
They no longer had control. That was the thing.
Yeah, exactly. And they knew, obviously I was so close to Mark and he was really important in the organization. So I'm sure that worry was like, if things go awry with Bonnie, then what's going to happen to Mark? And he's powerful. And he did end up using that power to help really, really take them down. So they were worried about that. But we moved into an apartment, didn't tell anyone our address, did like this whole government safe address thing. But we did, our previous landlord actually did see some private detectives like trying to find us. They lost us. We lost them. Yeah. We went into hiding.
Yeah. Did you think that the New York Times, I mean, obviously how everything unfolded, did the New York Times represent your story well? Did you feel good about it when it came out? And then the FBI, were you like, thank God it's over? Or was it sort of like just beginning for you of like, oh no, now?
I felt like nothing but gratitude for that New York Times piece, because that was what broke the story. So, I have my own feelings I don't think it was very empathetic to how it happens to people. It was just suddenly, it showed us a little bit as like crazy people who got involved in this branding sex cult. And for me also, like, I wasn't a part of the sex cult. So suddenly my name was branded everywhere with like Bonnie P's sex cult. And I'm like, oh my God.
Damn it. Yeah. The headlines, the clickbait, and you're like, damn it. No.
Right. But, you know, I was ready to have career suicide anyway as an actress. I was like, I don't care if my career's over. I just like don't want to die or be thrown in prison, wrongfully. But yeah, so, it could have been more empathetic, but it certainly broke the story. And it just, the timing of it all happened where the Me Too movement broke. And then that gave them a reason to release our story, which, it's kind of a longer story how that happened. But anyway, it came out and then the FBI got involved. And it took a while. Like, they had to investigate a lot. We went and testified. But by then, once I knew they were investigating, I knew in my soul that it was fine. They were going to get him. Mm-hmm. And then they
so your higher self was like, whew.
Yeah. And Mark didn't think so. So he didn't trust. He was like, I don't know, like they might not. But for the whole time, I just felt it was done. Yeah. But that was traumatic too. And the whole, just like testifying to the FBI and what that did to my body and the recovery time of that. Like, I actually slept for 3 or 4 days straight after that. It just takes such a toll on your body.
Because you're having to go back into that place. And I mean, maybe it's really interesting because it's what has been interesting for my journey. It's, this situation that I was in that happened 10 years ago. I thought I had done all the different modalities, healed, and could, talk about it, no problem. And then, occasionally I'll still get like something will come up and I'll be like, oh God, like, I guess there's more room for me to grow. And there's room for me, there's more trauma to like unpack or deal with. And it's like, okay, I have to, because I've talked about it in so many different ways and so many different, and so then it is interesting when, it does, when you have to tell your story again, you're like, okay, there's more for me because you shouldn't feel activated after a certain point anymore, so it's just like, wow, I just have more healing to do. So you told your story, so you have to, man, it's wild. So then all of this happens and then sort of, they do a documentary. Did this happen while he was going to jail?
The doc came out. Yeah, we were filming the doc the whole time. Like, as soon as we realized what was going on, we basically just started turning the cameras on. And one of our best friends, Jahan Nujaim, who ended up being the director, she actually had been a part of the group as well. And so we landed on her couch and just like bawled and told her what had happened. And she started rolling camera right then, just as a friend. She was like, you need to have this documented, even just to prove what happened in case they try to use anything against you.
Wow.
Yeah. And so we just
smart.
filmed. Yeah, because we wouldn't have had the wherewithal really to do that. But she was like, you got to document it. And so we were filming and filming.
You used your art, you paint with those colors to like alchemize it and heal.
Yeah, exactly. And both Mark and I felt such a purpose with that too. Like, it made me want to throw up telling my story in that way. Especially, it's one thing to tell your story years later, but to tell it while you're like throwing up and vomiting and rolling around on the floor crying. It was such a mess, but we both felt such a purpose to do it. It was like, it's the right thing to do. And I don't care if it destroys our careers. It was like, just.
Wow.
expose it.
Did you get creative control for the vow? Did you feel like the vow represented your vision? Because then, it's like the studio, the HBO, then they get to cut it in any way they want.
No, we didn't get creative control. We definitely had to hand that off. Like we thought about, like we could make a project or something, but you can't tell your own story like that. And you need someone who can be separate from it to tell a true piece of journalism. You can't really tell it yourself. So it wasn't really the way, like we just didn't have control of the story, but I'm so grateful for how it was told. And it could have been so much more just like focusing on all the sex cult stuff. And I feel like the vow did a really good, they did a really good job of breaking it down in a human sense. It was definitely well done, I think. And I'm just so grateful for Jahan. I never would have told my story to anyone else either, because she was like one of our dear friends.
I love that. Wow. Okay. So then how did you start to heal? Did you just kind of take time for yourself? And what was really interesting, the takeaway is you did find love in a hopeless place. Like you found your person, which is pretty extraordinary. So like there was a silver lining there and you were able to alchemize and have it be something really profound. I mean, it definitely, like I reached out to you after and I was like, thank you so much for being brave enough to tell this. And it was, for a lot of people who've gone through just so much, like it was very healing for, I think, like a lot of people.
Yeah. And that's amazing. Like we wanted to bring awareness to not only this cult, but cults in general. Cause at that time there wasn't much awareness at all. And I remember, telling some friends like this was a cult and the shock of like, oh my God, like you were involved in a cult, because it just wasn't really a known thing. And now I feel like that's really changed. There's a lot more awareness around that. And I'm grateful that we were able to play a part in that.
Do you think, so when I was going through my situation, I felt like I was shell shocked. Like you come out of war basically, and you're like, I don't know which way is up. I don't know where my north is, like where the North Star is. I don't know who was I, who were you, who was anybody in this world. Like I had to basically burn off the pieces that, needed to die. And I had to reconfigure my view of the world. Like basically your whole entire view of the world falls. So when you encounter malevolence, and now you have to be like, wait. I heard about these movies, like growing up where it's like, oh, Freddy Krueger. It's like there's these very terrifying movies that they put in the zeitgeist and you're like, well, that's, what humanity is capable of. But no, it's somewhere out over there. How did you reconfigure your view of the world? Because so PTSD is sort of when you have to reconfigure, you don't understand the world that you're looking at anymore and everything is fallen. Is that it's Dante's Inferno talks about this, where it's the lowest tier of hell is betrayal. And so sort of this betrayal of like what you thought it was, somewhat malevolent for somebody who was deeply insecure and had a lot of pain and caused, hurt people. So then it just became this sickness. So how did you reconfigure your view of the world and how did you build it from the ground up back again? And how have you been on that journey of trusting people again?
Yeah, it was a journey. I mean, so there was that one piece where, thank goodness I had my intuition, but the betrayal was enormous and like very physical, which, thus the rolling around on the floor crying and like throwing up, because it was just like, oh my God. And then there was the shame. I had so much shame for a long time. I mean, initially I felt so ashamed that I didn't even want to be like seen in a grocery store. Yeah. Like sunglasses, headphones in the grocery store, just get in, try not to have 5 panic attacks while I'm picking up the groceries and then get out. Yeah. It was pretty bad. And the shame lasted until I dived back into meditation. Wow. In 2022, Mark and I, like, a lot of healing had happened. I'd already done Obi-Wan by that point. And, and then I just went into meditation.
We're gonna get to talking about really fun things. Like Tanner's been looking forward to this, by the way. He's like, you did not tell me she was in Star Wars. Oh my God. The first ones and the latest ones is Obi-Wan Kenobi. Are you kidding me? So we're gonna get to that. So, and what was the shame? Were you blaming yourself for this? Were you, I
was very much, like the thought process was, how could I have been involved in something like this? You know, I'm unworthy of everything because of this, just like really beating myself up. Yeah, really, that was a really hard process. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard. And you know, what's really interesting. There was, I thought about this concept and I recently had this conversation actually, no, it was over the phone, but it led us to having this conversation where the ability to be able to forgive yourself is also the ability to be able to forgive them. So sometimes it's like you know, and those two things are linked. So it's sort of, I would go through these stages where I would be like, oh, I have so much love for you. I forgive you. And then I would be like, I want you to never exist in this life and the next, in all of eternity. Like I was mad. And then it was usually like, and then you just go to yourself and you're like, I'm really mad at myself. Like, how was I not, like, I thought I was smart enough to be able to see this, or I was wise enough to be able to understand this. And I just, you know, I couldn't see all the things, like, and I didn't. And I think for myself was like the most angry I was because I didn't listen to God. You know, I didn't listen to my higher self. And that was the hardest part, you know?
Yeah.
It's exactly. Like a self-abandoning, you know?
Totally. And also because I believed so much in the good that I thought we were doing there, it's like to recognize that not only was it not good, it was like evil and horrible. That was just like, how do you take that in?
Yeah. So you're like, how do I take that in, and how do I take that on, and how do I alchemize this? Yeah. And so what was your process in healing? How did you step by step start looking at your worldview differently? Because now you can see all the cults. Mm-hmm. You can be like, that's a cult, that's a cult, that's a cult. So that's the benefit of, I'm like, for me, I'm not very political. Like I'm not team blue. I'm not team red. I'm a nuanced, complicated person who like has, I'm somewhere in the middle, but I'm just like, I'm not playing sports teams. Like I'm not, I just,
You're not getting involved.
I'm just not getting involved. And I think that, I think there's a reason why we had team blue or team red before, was it was necessary because you have people conservatives are very low in openness. So they want to close the borders and they want to be very careful who they let in. Whereas, liberals and, high in openness, us creative people, we're like, yeah, like everyone can come in. And then if you don't you need both, you need discernment. You can't just let the cult leader into your house.
Yes.
Like you have to be discerning. So, and they're both necessary because you can't live life being closed off, and you can't have, there's a lot of order and there is a lot of chaos. And I think they have to blend because, nature is chaos. Whereas if you have too much order, it can be totalitarian, fascist government. So like they're both necessary of having balance. Everything is in a perfect form of when it's in balance. And when they're too extreme, then that's when everything's out of balance.
Totally.
So, how has it been useful now of your experience? Can you look back and now be grateful for those lessons, because now you can sort of see, even in the industry, sort of this cult mind thinking that definitely certainly happens a lot.
Totally. I've reached a place actually where I'm pretty much just grateful for it. And it really did happen literally in one meditation in 2022. I went in and somehow I went into like a full-on experience of now, like pure presence. And that's kind of a longer story in terms of all the spiritual stuff that happened too. But from that point, like all the emotional baggage had been released. It was like gone from my system.
Wow. And what is that meditation? And I need to do that.
I don't know how it happened. It was an act of grace. But after that meditation, like, you know, when you're telling a story or something and you're thinking about the past, your eyes go to the left to try to remember, or maybe not for everyone, but often you're like.
So yeah, in NLP, well, yeah, they've proven and disproven that. But yeah, I remember taking an NLP class.
So for me, it is. Yeah, for me, my eyes go to the left when I'm like trying to remember something in the past. And I noticed like as soon as that meditation had happened, I was trying to remember like the anger and all the feelings that I had around it, and I couldn't access it. And I kept like trying to put my eyes to the left to find it, and I couldn't. It was like gone. And that's not to say that all the trauma was gone, because I still have a bunch of stuff in my body, like somatic stuff that I need to release. But it's not tied up with the emotion of the anger and the betrayal and everything. That just went like poof. Like
that's amazing. Yeah. What was the meditation? What did you?
I just kind of dropped into presence. I don't know. I don't have like a technique or anything, but it was about an hour where I kind of just, I would call it like zoned into presence. And it was like pure awareness. Yeah. Very odd. I don't know how to describe it.
No,
it was really powerful.
I definitely want to practice this. And, you know, for other people like listening, like how could we,
how can I describe it?
Yeah. How can we access this?
Okay. So some practical tips that I believe kind of led me there were like watching my breath. So bringing my awareness just to the breath. And that kind of led me there. Yeah. And I've done breath watching plenty of times and it hasn't happened, but in that moment, for some reason it did. But I do believe that breath watching is a really powerful thing because it brings you into the moment.
Just listening to your breath.
Just kind of like feeling the sensations, witnessing it. Yeah. The inhale, the exhale. And when I'm in meditation, actually my breath really slows down as well. Like sometimes I'll only take a couple of breaths a minute or something.
Whoa.
So there's like a space that happens. So you can kind of tune into those spaces in between the breath as well. That's really powerful.
Wow.
Yeah, like the pause between.
Great. And were you being aware of your thoughts?
Yeah, there was still kind of thought stuff going on, but it was almost like the thoughts were encapsulated in the now. So they were all just like kind of doing their thing, but there was this presence. And I can still access that at times, but that was like full on. Yeah.
It kind of sounds like the same voice that it sounds to me that the connection of it was the same voice as, oh, wow, everyone's just really controlled and they don't seem very happy.
Yeah,
it's like it kind of
like an observing.
It's like observing. So you're observing the thoughts. You're like, wow, I'm watching Susie have these thoughts, and then I'm watching Susie breathe. And so it's sort of you're this
totally, like a meta awareness, and it activates a lot of joy for me as well when I get into that state. So I kind of go in and out, and it's pretty much my life's mission right now to just like stabilize it so that I can always be in that joy. But like after that awakening, for example, it lasted for, I don't know, like a month or something of just
that
the pure
sounds
joy.
Amazing.
It is.
Is this like Joe Dispenza?
I guess that's what he's pointing to as well, right?
Yeah, 100%. He talks about being in the state of bliss, in the state of it's all here. Like, and so this is the jump that I couldn't quite figure out. This is the question that I have. I'm like, listen, I completely understand what you're saying. I completely get it, of being in the state of, in the now of being like, this is an old story. However, there's still like these parts where, you know, you can still get activated. You can still get triggered by things. And you're like, damn it. Like your body, like, you know, the body keeps the score. So you're feeling, your body holds memories. So it's like, how do I expel this? But meanwhile, still like, okay, I want to ignore whatever. You don't necessarily need to, like, I would take with me the lessons that I learned, like, wow, this was very useful. So I can now use this to understand cult thinking and cult behavior. Wisdom. So I'm not going to, you know, discard that. But it's like, okay, this no longer serves me. But to have this new story of where your body is also aligned in that story, like catching up. And I don't know if that's just like practicing that over and over and over, of like this new story of, I have all the abundance, I have everything I need, like money's coming to me. And, you know, the well of our magnificence and all the possibilities are here kind of thing. But I'm still like, what's, you know, I'm always like, what are those little fine tunes? And this is kind of like, the reason for this podcast was this, you know, the study of greatness of how do you get to that point, like the way of thinking, you know,
awesome.
Like,
I get it. I totally get it. And by the way, like I still have triggers, like there's still stuff that triggers. But it's just like a big piece of it dropped off. And I feel like it's really layered. And now that I'm remembering,
so layered,
right?
It's like so much. There's so much to unpack. You're like, oh wait, here's another box. Here's another box. It's never-ending boxes. And even if you look through all of it, you're still like, there's just it is kind of like an onion where you keep being like, okay, here's another layer. Here's another layer, and this relates to
exactly. But sometimes when you drop off a really heavy layer, it's just like, it's like so much freedom because like that layer's gone, you know?
That's nice. Yeah. You're like not carrying all this weight and suddenly your shoulders feel lighter.
Yeah.
So, and how have you viewed, so getting back to that question of, so you had another huge awakening, another just kind of dropping off things that don't serve you anymore, which is amazing. How has your viewpoint of humanity shifted in all the ways? Like how has, what is your viewpoint of reality now?
Yeah. I mean, I see that both exist, like good and evil.
Yeah. Yeah.
And actually even like when I first had that whole horror of recognizing what had happened, I still actually could see that there was good. It didn't taint the whole world for me at all. But it was more of an acknowledgement of like, evil really does exist.
Yeah.
And we need to take that in, and we can't like be all Pollyanna about everything's love and light and everyone's
Pollyanna the shit out of life sometimes.
Yeah.
So,
right.
Yeah. That's why I got myself into that mess sometimes. Yeah.
Well, and we need to have the wisdom to see that, like there are some really dark things going on and it's good to just be aware of that. But also like, I think it's mostly good people. I don't know what the percentage is of like psychopaths and sociopaths, but I think it's mostly
like 1%. I think it's like 1%. And this is, I would actually say that I 1,000% believe this, like especially living in New York where you're with people constantly. I would say 90% of people are so good, like really want to do the right thing. They really want to be good, and we're all flawed and we all make mistakes. And sometimes we'll yell at each other in traffic. Or there was a moment when my mom had just died, and it was like a few months after, and I was feeling kind of emotional that day. And this was in Central Park, and I was looking for a place to meditate, and I'm finally meditating. And then my friend shows up because I was supposed to meet him. And then this woman, she was like, "Oh, can I sit here?" And I'm like, "Oh no, my friend's right here." And she's like, "No, and she just sat down. And I was like, no, my friend is going to sit here. And so we got into this whole like argument. And I was like, my friend's right here. Like, no, ma'am. And so we're fighting. And then, and then she's like, well, you have a nice day. And then, I'm like, what? And I'm kind of a little bit going off on her. I'm kind of just like, that was rude. Like who, and I feel like my grief was sort of spilling over.
Yeah.
My grief was spilling over and I just wanted a quiet time. And so then she walks away and then she's like, I can still hear you. And I'm like, I know. And I'm like, I'll apologize in 5 minutes. Just give me a second. I'm still pissed off. So then I go back. So then I go over and I'm like, look, ma'am, look. And so I tried to explain to her, the whole situation. And then I'm like, look, we're going to leave. You can have the seat. She's like, my friend just died. And I'm like, my mom just died. I'm so sorry. And so we hug it out. We go from fighting to like, I'm so sorry. I lost someone too. And we're both grieving together. And we literally hugged it out. Yeah. And I was like, you can have the seat now, even though she literally sat on me because she's like, I'm going to sit here. Like, you're not the boss of me. And I'm like, oh, like, and boundaries. So when somebody like invades my personal space is such a trigger. Like and so
you were two people grieving and it was just coming out like that. Oh my gosh.
And so I was like, let's hug it out. It's okay. And here you go. And then we had this like beautiful moment. So even when we're not at our best, I really believe that is the quintessential, like 90% where we're, like I'll have moments like that with humanity and people really want to, if I ask for help or, people really always want to help. Like they're always like, they're really good. And then there's like 5% who are just really on a bad track, that are just like really kind of want to take them with them. They're like, I'm in a bad mood and I want everyone to be on my level. And then there's like the other 5% or 1% that's, not so good.
Right. And then there's people that are brainwashed doing bad things because they think it's good too. And that's where we need to understand like coercion tactics and stop following people and like giving people power who are doing bad things. That's another piece of it.
And what's interesting is, and it always starts with the self, because it usually comes from like a wound. It usually comes from lack. It usually comes from I'm not enough and I'm really scared and I don't have a level of certainty. So I want to feel safe. So in my own life, when I'm like, I want to feel safe, here you go, you make the decisions, and then you're giving over your power, you're giving over the responsibility. And because you're in fear. And so I think like a lot of, what's happening today right now is we want someone else to figure it out for us. And we want to give our power to a leader. We want to give our power to whoever instead of taking it back ourselves and being like, I am responsible. I'm responsible for my own life. I'm responsible for my, home and, my car and my dog.
And knowing. Yeah.
And so it is like reconnecting back to that higher self. And it is scary because you're like, how do I discern God from this, other fear? Because it's hard to decipher. Is this God talking? Is this my higher self talking? Or is this fear? And I don't always, like when you're looking for guidance and you have to look within, it's really challenging sometimes to figure out which voice is what, which has been my sort of journey.
Totally. Yeah. I've found that it's a frequency thing. Like the fearful voice comes in, you can just feel the frequency of fear.
So after my mom passed away, I literally had this epiphany that the universe speaks in frequencies.
Yeah.
And vibration. And that if you're in a bliss, high vibration, then you're in a flow state. Then everything is coming to you so easily. And then when you're, in a fear state, then it's chaos.
Yeah, right. It's different frequency, different zone that you're in. Totally. Yeah.
It's this lower vibration. And then, you're getting into fights. You're like I did with that lady. And then we hugged it out because I was like, I'm not in my vibration. And this is sort of like, I'm not in my high vibration and I need to,
But then I need to
get back there. Yeah, the hug got me back. The hug got me back.
Yeah, totally.
Do you still keep in touch with anyone from there or?
A few people. I guess I had in my mind that a lot of people would come out and we'd all be friends again. It would all be like happy and whatever. But it was such a mess that I think there's a lot of people who did end up waking up, but they didn't really like the way we went about things, or like the smear campaign, the initial smear campaign against us worked so well that even though they woke up, they still couldn't come back to like be our friends. Yeah. So there's a few really dear close friends, but not very many given how many friendships we had in there. It was like, whew, yeah, we lost like our entire community.
I imagine that it was probably you woke up so much quicker. So they only probably woke up to this at like only a few years ago. So you had a lot more time, like in 2014, like that's a lot of amount of time to kind of come to that realization. So yeah, I wonder if it's just sort of they're now in the place of like, I don't want anyone to see me. I feel shame. And so I imagine that it's like anything that's triggering to them. And yeah, it's tough out there.
Yeah, I think so. And there are definitely some people who still feel super broken from it all. Of course. It's like, what a mess. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think that like coming from that and kind of, having that, finding those, like that meditation of being in your bliss and changing your state and being like, I don't have to stay here, just because like this is a story. This was a hero's journey, that led you onto this path to now you can talk about it and feel grateful about it. What do you feel grateful about?
I think I do feel a certain sense of wisdom, and like I've been through the ringer. I've been to all the dark places. Like I've felt it all. I know what it's like to really, really be suffering and struggling and in a state of shame and like self-rejection and everything. Like I totally went there. I experienced all of that and then like found my way back. And I'm so grateful for my spiritual path because that has been the healing thing for me. So like, it's crazy to say, but I like wouldn't really change it.
Yeah, like I wouldn't change it either.
Yeah.
Wouldn't change it either.
Yeah. Like when you learn how to take your power back, that's the lesson. That's the power.
And what was part of that process of taking your power back? Just step by step?
Yeah. The intuition was a big piece of like, no, I'm going to listen to what I know deep down. And then boundaries was another piece of the healing. And taking that back of like my boundaries were pretty shot after that experience because they're so broken down. It's like you become such a like just doing whatever you're told. So it was kind of taking that back and starting to draw boundaries in my life and recognizing like other toxic people in my space that I needed to kind of have a barrier with. Yeah. And just in a simple sense, like living the life that I want, living life the way I want, where I didn't think that I could do that for years. Yeah. Yeah. It's like, you don't think you're worthy or deserving or like you're not allowed. Yeah. It's like, oh my gosh, like I'm totally building my life exactly the way I want.
It's so interesting because it's like you when you're in the thick of it, you think, at least my journey was like, I won't get on the other side of this. Like my brain felt broken. Like I felt like I couldn't get back to my baseline. And that was actually when I read the book, The Body Keeps a Score. And I found I did every modality. I took NLP. I had a relationship coach. I had a Tony Robbins coach, like a life coach. I had going to therapy for 10 years. I went to Hoffman Institute, which is like group therapy. I even went to like some AA meetings. Like I was like, literally, I will try anything. And the neurofeedback, because I think the awareness was really, really helpful. But I was like, all right, I don't want to be in this story anymore. I want to be on a different vibration. And so the neurofeedback helps you get your alpha and your beta waves, your gamma and your delta waves just all align. So you're not in a state of fight or flight anymore. Right. So that for me was immensely helpful, where it helps you recognize when you're being triggered and it shows you. So there is this so neurofeedback, your like brain is connected to like a TV that you watch, and every time that you're triggered, the TV gets smaller. So it's teaching you and being aware of every time that you feel triggered or activated. So then you're like, oh my God. So the amount of times, I mean, my sort of thing was I just couldn't be alone with people. Like I was just like, I couldn't trust people. I couldn't trust myself. And so slowly but surely my friendships and neurofeedback like really helped me just not be in that state and get back to my baseline and, you know, who I was before all that shit went down.
Amazing. I'm so glad you had that.
Yeah, no. So that was like super, super helpful. But yeah, I mean, it's, and you know, what's really interesting. It's like when you're like, okay, life is a game of choose your own adventure. And, you know, and so it's like, wow, okay, I went down this path and now I want to go back on the path that I think was laid for me. So I want to continue walking like, well, I got off the path. Now I'm going to get back on it, you know?
Yeah.
And then you get back on it. And that's kind of been my experience where you can always get back on the path and it doesn't, you know, so it's kind of like, it's like, yeah, it's like, I know what that path looks like. And you're like, there's now the path of love. You're like, okay, that's path of fear and giving your power away. And you're like, okay, this is the path of love. Yeah. Fuck yeah. That's where like all the magnificent and wonderful things are. I want to do that.
Yeah. And that's how you learn, because you go off and you get to experience the contrast of how horrible the other way of doing it is. It's like, it's how you learn.
It's totally how you learn. So then, okay. So your song I'm obsessed with, by the way, this was in one of the end. When is that? Where can I download this?
Unraveling.
Yes.
I never released it yet. So I need to. Yeah, it was in the Vow. And you can watch it on YouTube. You can listen to it on YouTube. It's up there.
Oh, okay. Amazing.
But I need to release it as an actual song. I just haven't yet.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's so good. It's so good. So now, as you had the spiritual awakening, and as you've found the forgiveness, have you found forgiveness for him? Have you been like, hey, you're just on this path? And like, kind of how I relate to one of my best friends is, everyone can always come back on the path of love. So it's like, you know, you can always come back. So how do you find forgiveness and love for people? Like my uncle was murdered, and what's interesting is he was just wrong place, wrong time, and wrong place, wrong time, and it was a robbery gone wrong. And I think the guy, I think the guy was just looking for someone to rob real, you know, quickly, and he thought like he was trying to survive. He was with his girlfriend. And so he hits him with a brick, and he ends up thinking probably I'm just going to knock him out and just take whatever. And turns out now it's murder, homicide, and now he's in jail. So it's like he's caused so much pain in our family, and then and his immediate family. And now, you know, then he's also caused pain. Now he's sitting in jail. And so when I thought about it, I was like, I don't wish him bad. I don't want more pain. You know, I don't want any more. I just want healing, because he's sort of in this place where now he's sitting in jail, and, you know, who knows what happened to his girlfriend and his family and the people that are mourning for him. So it's like this thing. So what I found in the lesson in that was just, I wish you well, and I wish you healing, and I hope that you can find forgiveness for yourself and, you know, for all of it. So have you found forgiveness?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, totally. Like I don't wish bad on any of them. And I wish healing. And
yeah,
like I think of even Nancy, you know, I mean, I feel her pain. And, you know, with Keith, it's interesting because he never really, that wasn't my betrayal so much, interestingly. Like obviously he designed the system that was so traumatic for me.
Yeah.
But some of the betrayals were more from the women for me. So for him, kind of, I have felt pretty neutral. It's just like even I sometimes feel bad about him being in prison. Like, it must be horrible. It's like, ugh, like, what a life. But he needs to be there.
I think he got beat up in jail. Like, it
was a number of times. And, it took me a while to get there because, like, people would say, you need to forgive and let go and everything, with the women too, because I was holding on to that for a while. But it's like, you can't forgive until it really happens authentically. You can't rush it. And you certainly can't tell somebody else, that they need to forgive their abuser or whatever.
Yeah, sure.
But it is freeing to eventually be like, yeah, I wish them all well. I still live with some PTSD symptoms, and that sucks.
Same.
It's like, it's a bummer.
It sucks. Yeah. It's such a bummer. Why?
Yeah. And we can probably peel them off. Like, I'm sure there's healing that happens in layers, but it's like, because Nancy did a whole bunch of things to me that led to some pretty severe PTSD. So, like, I'm living with that, but she doesn't need to feel bad anymore just because that damage is done. It's like, ultimately, I really do wish that everybody could find their way back to love. I don't know if people like psychopaths and sociopaths and those kind of dark triad personalities can. I don't know if that's possible. I wish they could.
Machiavellian, narcissist, and what is the dark triad, Tanner? Can you wait, look it up? I think it's Machiavellian. So it's like all the power and the control, narcissist and like psychopath or sociopath. Yeah. Is that it? I think so.
And maybe there can be redemption for some of those people. I feel like this is just a guess, but like maybe sometimes that can happen through religion or spiritual awakenings, like a spiritual thing.
Yeah.
I don't
ayahuasca, psychedelics.
Sure. Yeah. I'll hold the space for that.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it yet, but I would imagine that is possible. But I don't think that like just by going to therapy or something, they're going to change. It's like,
it has to be something, a deeper thing for sure.
And not to downplay therapy, because of course that's really powerful too. And that's really helped you.
Yeah. No, it helped me create awareness. So I'm super aware, but I couldn't, my sort of thing was to stop being in a state of fight or flight. And, and that, I think, meditation definitely helped, but I think the neurofeedback really helped have me be aware. Because there was just a whole year where it was just a lot. Like the house that I was renting, like burned down. And so I was just like, it was just a constant like PTSD. It was, but I mean, like, honestly, the fire was one of the best things that ever happened to me. So it literally forced me to, take a year, a year off, and I wasn't working. I couldn't book a job to save my life. And it just, I really just went through, just from childhood, I just was like, okay, what is my relationship with men? And I had to like unpack just from the very, very beginning of like being bullied in school and, having a crush on the bully who would bully. I was like, what's going on there? So,
so there was lots of healing. And in hindsight,
lots of healing.
It really, like, looking back in hindsight, I feel like we can see things from a higher perspective. Like, you wouldn't have healed those other things had those things not happened, or, we wouldn't have gained certain wisdom without it. When you're in the thick of it, it's like you can't see that often. But
no. So, and what were the lessons and the takeaways like that you can like the profound? So, like, the fire is one of the best things that happened to me, just because I learned to alchemize. Like that was sort of the lesson where I had a choice, where my friend sat me down. She's like, listen, you can choose this time to cry about this and stay here and feel really sad, and you have every right to, or you can use this, use this vast amount of energy. So how were you able to alchemize it? I mean, clearly The Vow, happened. It was very successful on HBO. You had your music that was finally out. And then you booked Star Wars. So I know Tanner wants to hear all about it. I do too, because I love Star Wars. And so yeah, how was that experience sort of alchemizing?
Yeah, it was all so surprising. I mean, I will say like the biggest gifts of this whole thing have been finding myself and finding my joy and knowing that that's always within me. Like no one can take that away from me. I won't give it away anymore. It's like I've learned all of that. But the gifts were really surprising because when this all happened and like doing the vow and everything, it truly felt like career suicide. It's like, what a PR move to just let that mess be seen.
Yeah.
But again, it was right. And then, yeah, from that, just the gifts don't stop. Like the beautiful people who reach out like you, the connections that I've been able to make with other people who can relate to this and just like amazing, kind souls and community. And then Obi-Wan came from the vow too. Like, I know, like I wasn't trying to act. I kind of like, I wanted to do it, but I was so broken that I'm not like going to try and audition at that point. This was like in 2020 when the vow came out.
2019, I was like, oh, a shell of myself. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, how am I going to like audition now? I'm like shaking like a leaf.
Yes. Oh my God. We lived a very similar life. I know.
Yes. We need to spend more time together.
I know. You need to I would love to see you whenever you're here. That would be amazing.
Yes.
If you're ever in New York or LA.
Yes. Okay. Or if you're in Portugal.
Yes. Okay. So you're shaking like a leaf. You're like, oh my God, I don't want to audition. How did that call come to you?
So I originally was in Star Wars, so my character kind of existed, and I thought that maybe it would come back around at some point. And I knew that if they did like an Obi-Wan Kenobi story, there would be a place for my character there, like maybe a small place. But then I guess they were in pre-production, they were writing and everything. And then my understanding is that the producers saw the vow and were really moved by my story and how I handled it and like the strength that I found. And so while I was in a puddle, just feeling broken, we'd moved to Portugal and everything. I get a message, about a Lucasfilm audition. And I was like, it's interesting. I was like, I guess that actually I ignored it for a while because I didn't even know that it was Lucasfilm. I was like, I don't know, like a casting director. Okay. So I actually put it off and then it kept kind of niggling at me. So then I looked into it. And before I knew it, I was on a Zoom with Deborah Chow, the director. And she was just like, we see you. We see your strength. We're proud of you. We're going to rewrite stuff. I guess they kind of rewrote things to write me in and let that strength be seen in my character. For the final episode was the kind of the big arc for my character, Obi-Wan. And I mean, it felt so beautiful because I felt so seen. Yeah. And she was aware that I had PTSD and everything. And like everyone was really kind about that. And then I just was like, okay, buckle up, get yourself ready to be on set again. And it's like,
oh my
all the
God.
things to heal. Yeah.
How did you get yourself ready for that experience?
Well, I actually injured myself soon after I got that call. And I knew I had to do like a few stunts. And I was like, yes, I'd love to do them. And then I slipped in Lisbon running down like a cobblestone street and I landed on my coccyx and like messed up my spine. So I had like all these injuries to heal and just like really eating very, very clean, just trying to clear out the gunk from my system, doing all the things I could think of. Like I did a bunch of therapy at that point. I was trying to meditate at that point, but I felt so stressed about being on set that I was like, oh my gosh, it was a challenge to get ready. But I just got myself really healthy and, to the best of my ability. And it was an amazing experience to be back on set and just have it in such a different way.
Totally. And how was that experience being back on set? Being among such an iconic like the franchise or it's beyond a franchise at this point. I mean, I don't even like a universe. It's like, Marvel universe,
galaxy.
This is the Star Wars, the galaxy. What, how were the other actors? How was that experience? Walk me through that.
Yeah, they were all super kind. I mean, I hadn't seen Joel Edgerton for years, so it was amazing to reconnect with him and play that role again.
That's awesome.
And then it was so much fun, like doing stunts and everything. There was a whole fight scene. I was like, I never saw that coming for my character. Like, she was a somewhat, kind of boring character, but they made her really awesome. And so to be on set and experience that, yeah, it was so great. And I guess I was on set for maybe just a week total or something, but there was just that whole build up to it. And then I just felt so proud of myself afterwards. It's like, wow, what a recovery.
So cool. That's so cool. So, and you had done Star Wars like back in 2002?
Yeah. Wait, actually, we filmed 2000. We filmed episode 2. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was like 21 years later.
Whoa, that's wild. So what, you haven't changed a bit. Like you look exactly the same. What was that first experience like being on set in such a huge giant film?
I mean, so different. Like when you're 16,
yeah,
you're so young. It's just all exciting. Like you think of it in such a different way of like, it's just exciting opportunities and everything felt fun and, light and everything. Whereas this, after being through what I'd been through, it was like, very different experience. Yeah. And so much gratitude and just really trying to take that all in and be present with it all. And yeah, it was amazing. And then I went right on to another film after that. So it was like, wow, okay, I guess we're doing acting now.
Wow. And how was that? What was that film?
It was called My Favorite Girlfriend. By Amanda Raymond. It was like a romantic comedy, and I played a character that had DID, so dissociative identity disorder. I played.
Wow.
How many characters did I play? 5, 6, something like that. So that was a marathon too. I was like, okay, like really. And by that point, I felt like I'd healed myself enough. I could do it. And we just did a marathon of this movie. But as you know, it's like they are marathons, and you need to be ready to just kind of buckle up and
totally
do it.
I wonder if that was cathartic for you, because I kind of feel like we get the roles that we're meant to get because of whatever's going on in our lives. It definitely reflects a lot of things. And so when I think of, when I've gone through trauma, you do sort of disassociate. And so So like recently when my mom had passed, I could feel myself disassociating because it happens very, very suddenly. And I was like, no, like, Spirit, we're dealing with this now. I don't want to deal with this later. So how was that journey of having to, you're basically dealing with trauma. So it's like, there's been some unique way to, I guess, I think what that journey is for somebody who has that disorder is because they've gone through trauma and they're trying to figure out a way to survive it, deal with it. And this is like the certain way in which they figured out a way that they can survive. Is that?
Totally. Yeah. And I met with the director, and she actually believed that I could do it because of what I'd been through. And I didn't believe I could. When she offered me the role, I was like, are you kidding me? Are you crazy? I was like, why do you think I can do this?
Yeah.
But she was like, I just know you can. And so I felt so safe with her. That was the main thing. Yeah. Just to say, okay, she believes in me. I feel safe with her. Why not? Like, why would I say no to this?
Yeah.
And it was like, I think she recognized that to play that kind of a role, you do need to have some access to like deep stuff and know what it's like to be traumatized. So I for sure brought all of that stuff in.
Totally.
Yeah.
That makes all the sense. So then you could actually paint with those colors. It's sort of you're alchemizing it, you're releasing it. And it's like allowing your body to, for you to release it from your body in a sense. So you're sort of like, okay, you're turning it into gold.
Yeah, exactly. And that role stretched me so much as well. Like I played one of the characters was a rock star, and like I'm a musician, but I'm not really a rock star. So I had to get really tough, and just, it was fun to stretch in that way.
That's awesome. Do you have any other projects coming up? And are you working on more songs and albums, and where can I hear it?
Yes. Okay. So I need to release that song, Unraveling, sometime soon. I know there's more music coming, but I'm not quite sure what that's going to look like yet.
Sure.
The next thing that I'm really excited about is Mark and I, when he's not too busy, my husband, because he's right now working on 2 documentaries. But when he's finished with that, there's a project that we're going to do together that's about spiritual awakening.
Wow.
So that's really inspiring for me to bring the spiritual stuff into film and to do a film project that feels like light, like a beautiful, and I mean, spiritual awakening isn't necessarily light. It's not all like sunshine and rainbows, but just the topic lights me up so much that it'll be nice to do that. Yeah. And then acting, there's a couple of things in the pipeline. We'll see kind of what pans out. I love it too, but I've got like one foot in Hollywood and most of my body out. But when people call me in for great things, I'm like, of course. Yeah.
Well, I kind of feel like you figured it out. Like that's kind of, you know, living a great life, because I mean, our lives as artists, it's more than just the stories that we tell. And what's really interesting is the stories that we tell to ourselves and how we reframe, you know, these stories, like the vow and whatever that is. You're like, wow, that's just a footnote now, where it's like something that happened and then you alchemize it. And then you're like, okay, what else? What else is next? You know, I want to release this. And you're like, yeah, exactly. I want to tell more light stories. Same thing. Cause it's the stories we tell. I can't even tell you how I think about that all the time, that it can really, the narratives that we say to ourselves inside of our heads, the stories that, just that constant dialogue and relationship we have with ourselves. And it's really important, the stories that you tell. And kind of, I mean, what's really fascinating to me is, I think it was, Apocalypse Now that had, this documentary that, basically they did a documentary about Apocalypse Now, and it was just so dark because it was such a dark story that it affected everyone on the set. And it was and so it really does. So it's like, it is really important what I've noticed now in my life. It's really important, you know, to have levity and to have light. And even though, you have to fight dragons on that hero's journey, you know, there does need to be comedy. There does need to be, you know, levity and lightness, and to continue on to that, you know, path of lightness, because we live in this realm where it is a bit heavier. And then I think in the other realm, you know, the spiritual realm, it's very light. But I think we come here to experience consciousness, and we come here to experience what it feels like to be in our bodies and to eat and to drink and to
lose ourselves so we can find ourselves
so we
again.
can find ourselves again. Exactly. So to, you know, take the wrong path. And so that it leads us back. Oh, okay. Well, I've taken the wrong path. So now I know what that looks like. So I definitely only want to take the right path. So, thank you so much for sharing your story. Thank you so much for being so vulnerable.
Thank you so much.
I felt so vulnerable being here with you, you know, joining you on this journey. And it's so cool that, you know, you've managed to turn this into something great.
Thank you so much. Yeah. And, you know, as I said in the beginning, I'm just really careful how I tell this story, because I think it has been like not necessarily my story so much, but like this story has been told in ways that are that just haven't done it a good service, or however you would describe that. And so I really do trust you, and it's nice to open it all up again.
It is a huge honor. It is a huge honor. If there's anything you don't want, we can delete it. So, you know, it's all.
I think it's good. There was a bit of chaos, so I'm sure you'll figure out how to make it flow.
Thank you.
But thank you so much.
I feel so honored. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. Great ones. And thank you for, you know, just helping probably the people out there too, just to figure out better tools, because, you know, life is going to kill us. And there are going to be dragons on the journey, and whether we want to see them or not. And it's a question of having your eyes wide open on that journey, and to, to continue to have more and more tools, because that's, just what life is. Nature eats itself. And you're like, okay, we're all going to die at some point, but how do we navigate this world where there is, these there is good and evil and light and dark, and how do we navigate this world, trying to do our best every day, So thank you so much for giving us more tools and something to think about. So I'm totally going to think about that when I'm meditating today, of just observing the thoughts and being present, because I think that that's really cool that, for a month after you had just a bliss phase.
Yeah. It's really possible. And actually that is like my main message right now, and why I speak so much about spiritual stuff on social media. It's like, it's possible for all of us. Like, we're not meant to be living in all this trauma and fear.
No.
It's like our nature is joy underneath. So let's find it.
Yeah. I think it's the Marianne Williamson quote, where our greatest fear is not that we are small or insignificant. I'm paraphrasing. Our greatest fear is that we are more magnificent beyond measure, or something, that we're so powerful, and that we can do amazing things in the world. And I think that grandness can be intimidating, to be able to walk in that greatness sometimes, where it's just like, it's easier to be like, to eat, it's like, I have my green juice, but that, I want that ice cream, and I, want to eat that, I don't know, pasta, like bread or like whatever. And, I haven't, because I'm like, I've been avoiding gluten, but
me too.
But ice cream is like my sort of like chocolate, and is just my go-to, or just like sugar. And so I'm trying to just be like, oh God, it's just, so it's sort of just being.
It takes some will. Yeah.
It takes some will to be disciplined, but it is also the balance of having, like, being disciplined, but also having joy in life, and merging those two. It's a constant integration, Yeah. Bonnie, thank you so much. You have been a joy. Thank you.
Thank you, Susie.
Hi guys, if you like this video, please comment, like, and subscribe so we can get on that algorithm and you can see more of our latest episodes.
A whole nother level.